Alcibiades' luck had finally run out. The Athenian loss sent him into hiding, and in the process he was robbed of most of his money.
Alcibiades goes on to die rather ignominiously, probably as part of another love affair gone wrong, and is killed by irritable relatives of the girl.
He took enormous pleasure in his capacity to outwit people. And he outwitted himself in the end. But along the way, the path that he followed is simply extraordinary. I mean, there really is no other figure in Greek history who is quite as colorful and as interesting. And of course, in the end, it's fatal to him.
After their defeat at Aigis Potamoi, the people of Athens hid behind the walled city of Piraeus, and Lysander built a navy blockade across the entrance to the city's harbor.
The Athenians have lost their last fleet. They have lost the capacity to resupply the city. It's really only a matter of how many months can they hold out before they starve.
Athens fell in March of 404 BC. Lysander entered the city and took control of its government and its people. The 27-year Peloponnesian War was over.
People in Athens were petrified that the same thing that they had done to other cities during the course of the war, killing all the men, enslaving all the women and children, was about to be done to them.
There certainly was pressure from Thebes and Corinth, Sparta's most powerful allies, to burn Athens to the ground and enslave its population. But Sparta ultimately chose a different fate for Athens.
What was most significant about the way the Peloponnesian War ended is not that the Spartans, rather than the Athenians, won. It's that the Spartans chose not to destroy Athens. There were certainly people in Sparta who wanted to, and there were many Athenians who expected that this would happen.
Sparing Athens, however, was not done out of mercy, but out of political necessity.
The allies of Sparta really wanted the Athenians dead. But Lysander and the Spartans realized that by destroying Athens, they would create a power vacuum that would be filled by Thebes, with which the Spartans were already having trouble.
For Sparta, the question would be, if we don't destroy Athens, what will we do with it? The beginning of a new era in foreign policy will actually be the beginning of the end for Sparta. It was 404 BC. The 27-year-long Peloponnesian War was over, and so was the golden age of Athens.
The results of the Peloponnesian War is that an entire generation has learned nothing other than war. There's a whole generation who have not been able to invest their creative talent in architecture, literature, town planning. And so we see the great buildings on the Acropolis that are not finished. We see the gradual demise of great tragedy, and the great historians will be gone.
The Athenians also saw that Sparta was in control of their once great empire.
They take away the navy. They insist on breaking down places in the wall so that they're not defensible. There's no empire, there's no money, there's no fleet. They must become members of the Spartan alliance. They swear to have the same friends and enemies as the Spartans and follow them where they lead.
A new government was installed in Athens to essentially remake the democratic city-state into a mini Sparta.
Sparta made it its business to replace democracy everywhere it could with oligarchy. The Spartans thought that democratic regimes were too warlike, inspired too much popular enthusiasm, too disorderly, and too exposed to foreign ideas.
The terms of the peace that Sparta imposed upon Athens were that they should establish an oligarchic government, overseen by 30 pro-Spartan Athenians, and it came to be known as the 30 Tyrants.
The takeover of Athens was Sparta's first attempt at nation-building, and it was a dismal failure. Under the direction of Lysander, who was a far better admiral than diplomat, The so-called 30 tyrants began a terror campaign against anti-Spartan forces inside Athens.
And they do terrible things. I mean, this is the worst internal civil war that Athens ever has. They kill something like 1,500 Athenians. It's an amazing number when you realize that the number of Athenian male adult members of the citizen class at that time might be around 20,000-25,000 people.
It was so bloodthirsty that the Athenian democratic exiles who marched back into Athens to retake their city had the support of the king of Sparta.
King Pausanias, who is now one of the kings in Sparta, is a traditionalist, very opposed to Lysander, very opposed to everything that's going on. And it's not too much to say that there is a conflict between kings.
Within several months, the victory over Athens had irrevocably divided Sparta, forced the rest of the Greek world to pick sides, and led to the mass murder of everyone in the middle.
The Peloponnesian War has taught people that you either have to look toward oligarchs or democrats for your safety, but men of moderation and men who try to bridge those political and economic differences wind up dead.
It was, in every sense of the word, a Pyrrhic victory, a war in which no one wins.
Athens lost the war, and it lost its empire. Never would they be as powerful again as they had been before the Peloponnesian War. The funny thing, though, is that although Sparta won the war, it too was devastated. It's very ironic that at the very moment of their victory, the Spartans are really laying the groundwork for their own collapse.
After the installation of an oligarchy in Athens, Lysander supported the takeover of as many other city-states as possible in the former Athenian Empire. Sparta quickly sets up 10 oligarchs in each of the Athenian allied states. Instead of being liberated, the people were indoctrinated into a system that had them wondering if they had been too hasty in rejecting Athenian rule.
You want to trade the Acropolis and Athenian democracy for Spartan barley bread and the agoge. No one wants to do that. You want to trade an Athenian drachma for a piece of Spartan lead. Nobody wants to do that.
And unlike the Athenians, they weren't great orators. They weren't able to project an ideal that the other Greeks could rally around.
The new Spartan leadership needed charisma to win over their new conquests, a quality sorely lacking in Spartan culture.
The fundamental weakness of that culture is the Spartans lack imagination. That's not prized at Sparta. They lack boldness, and they are not charming. They treat the other Greeks like dogs. And they do so because they think of themselves as being a breed apart, of being something absolutely superior to others.
There's a whole series of Spartan generals and leaders who go overseas and are brutal to the very people they're in charge of winning over. And what the Greek world has done is substitute an enlightened imperial master for sort of a brutal thuggery of inept Spartan commanders.
The type of discipline that they could impose on their own troops, that was one thing. But when they started imposing it on other people, they would make sailors would have to stand with iron anchors on their shoulders all day. That kind of thing didn't go over too big. People, they weren't too popular.
And here I think we have to go back to thinking about the training of a young Spartan. After all, who outside of your unit really matters? The world is a place to be exploited for the good of people who matter, and that's exactly the way they treat the Aegean. They act simply rapaciously in a way that pretty quickly has them involved fighting some of their own allies.
A brutal, imperialistic Sparta hell-bent on taking over the Greek world was not the reason why Sparta's allies fought for 27 years in the Peloponnesian War.
Sparta is ready to step in as the next great imperial power. This is shocking to Sparta's allies. The allies of Sparta had supposed that Sparta was going to be a liberator, was going to create a free Aegean, free of the imperial state Athens. The Spartans don't see it that way. They see basically the opportunity to take just what they want.
The first city-state to successfully rebel against Spartan hegemony was the first that fell, Athens.